You have looked at what's happening here and measures in other countries. How likely are the restrictions that we have here, how likely are they to really smother this virus and drastically cut infections?
Really smother? Not at all. I mean, our lockdown is a giant garden party compared to the lockdowns in China and even in Italy. And it's getting looser. I hear anecdotally that people are holding, quiet garden parties or barbecues, and people are still going out on internet dates and having play dates with kids. And unfortunately, that's the reason that we have about 30,000 new infections a day in this country. China didn't reopen until they had 0 new infections a day, because that's when you've really gotten control of the virus and you know where it is, you know where your new cases are, and you can do contact tracing on 100 new cases a day. You can't do contact tracing on 30,000 new cases a day. If you assume that everybody has 45 contacts, which is about the average in Sichuan province, that's 1.3 million contacts you have to trace every day. So we're nowhere near getting on top of this virus right now. We're really not responding to this in a rational way, and the model is there. We're reluctant to follow China, but they did it. They did something nobody else ever expected. It was like catching the wind. They stopped a fast-moving pandemic in its tracks. Unheard of.
Right. I mean, well, it seems like what China did is far more heavy-handed than anything we're likely to see in this country. But let me ask you, do you understand why
I don't
we
agree
still...
with heavy-handed.
No? Oh, okay.
I have a problem with this whole, it's brutal. Chinese people love their families just as much as Americans love their families. They were initially reluctant to go into these quarantine shelters too. But when it became clear that it was saving the lives of their families, I mean, yes, some of them were forced in. Some of them were chucked into the back of ambulances by policemen. But that was not the norm. The norm was you were told, please come with us to the shelter. You will have food. You will have medical care. We will keep an eye out for you. And in 3 weeks, if you're good to go back home, we're to test you and make sure you're okay. And then you can go back home. And it's portrayed as brutal. But in this case, it was not brutal to its own citizens. It saved probably 10 million lives. That's how many I estimated would have died in China if this had just gone unchecked.
Yeah. So would you see like half measures? I mean, like half full subway cars, restaurants with people seating 8 feet apart, or kids going to school every other day? We're going to see things like that?
Yes, and those things are all in practice in China right now. Even though the country has virtually 0 cases, you go into a restaurant in China, you can go up to the counter and get some food. If you want to eat in the restaurant, there has to be 6 feet between you and the person next to you and nobody in front of you. And you have to wear a mask. And they have regular spray downs with disinfectants, and they have extra ventilation coming through and lots of other measures. And you also have an app on your phone that in which the government lets whether it thinks you're healthy or not. So if you're immune because you've recovered, you've got a green light on your app. And if you're also have not been any place where they know there's been a lot of exposure recently, then you have a green light, and you have to show that app in order to get into the subway, in order to walk into an office building, in order to basically do anything except go home and self-isolate. If you have a yellow or a red, you have to go into quarantine.